McLaren asks big questions after Red Bull's engine change. Horner's return to the grid has been teased, and all the latest F1 news. Do consider subbing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. What if I told you that Formula One's most promising title contender might never understand why his championship dreams are slipping away? Oscar Piastri's recent confession about McLaren's mysterious performance issues reveals a troubling reality that could haunt both him and the sport's brightest young talent. Picture this scenario. You're leading the World Championship in the most competitive era of Formula One history. You're driving for one of the fastest teams on the grid. Your car feels perfect beneath you. Yet somehow, inexplicably, you're losing pace to your teammate race after race, watching a 24-point deficit grow larger with each passing weekend. This isn't fiction. This is Oscar Piastri's current nightmare. The Australian driver finds himself in an unprecedented situation that challenges everything we think we know about motorsport. After dominating the early stages of the 2025 season and building a commanding 34-point championship lead following his brilliant Dutch Grand Prix victory, Piastri has experienced one of the most baffling collapses in recent Formula One memory. What makes this story particularly fascinating is how it defies conventional racing wisdom. When drivers lose performance, there's usually an obvious explanation. Maybe they're struggling with car setup changes, battling injury, or facing increased pressure. But Piastri's situation breaks all these rules. He's not making mistakes behind the wheel. He's not crashing out of races due to overdriving. Instead, he's executing clean, professional drives while mysteriously lacking the raw pace that once made him the championship favorite. Let's examine the numbers that tell this incredible story. Over the past 5 Grand Prix weekends, Piastri hasn't secured a single podium finish. During that exact same period, his teammate Lando Norris has claimed 2 race victories and a sprint win. The performance swing between these McLaren drivers has been so dramatic that what was once a 34-point advantage for Piastri has transformed into a 24-point deficit to Norris. This reversal becomes even more remarkable when you consider that both drivers are operating identical machinery. Formula One regulations ensure that teammates receive cars built to identical specifications using the same components and aerodynamic packages. Yet somehow, Norris has found several tenths of pace per lap that remain completely elusive to Piastri. The mystery deepens when we analyze Piastri's own assessment of his recent performances. Speaking candidly about his struggles, the young Australian revealed something that should concern every Formula One fan. He believes McLaren has discovered some evidence explaining his pace deficit in Austin and Mexico, where he finished 5th in both races while feeling completely comfortable with his driving. However, Piastri admits that the broader question of why certain aspects of his racecraft suddenly stopped clicking may never receive an answer. This admission represents something unprecedented in modern Formula One, where teams invest hundreds of millions of dollars in data analysis and performance optimization. The idea that a top-tier team like McLaren cannot definitively explain why one of their drivers has lost performance suggests we're witnessing something truly extraordinary. Consider the implications of this mystery for the sport itself. Formula One prides itself on being the pinnacle of automotive technology and human performance. Teams employ armies of engineers, data analysts, and performance specialists whose job is to extract every possible millisecond from their cars and drivers. The fact that McLaren, one of the most successful and technologically advanced teams in the sport, cannot fully explain Piastri's pace loss challenges fundamental assumptions about how Formula One operates. The psychological dimension of this situation adds another layer of complexity to an already intriguing story. Imagine being a professional athlete who suddenly discovers that your natural abilities have mysteriously diminished, and nobody can explain why. Piastri must continue performing at the highest level while battling the mental challenge of not understanding what's gone wrong with his driving. This uncertainty creates a feedback loop that could potentially worsen his situation. When drivers don't understand why they're struggling, they often begin questioning their natural instincts and making subtle changes to their driving style that can actually hurt performance. The fear of not knowing what's wrong can become just as damaging as whatever underlying issue originally caused the problem. What makes Piastri's story even more compelling is how it contrasts with traditional Formula One narratives about driver development and championship battles. Usually, we see young talents gradually improving throughout their careers, learning from mistakes and building confidence through experience. Piastri appeared to be following this exact trajectory before his mysterious performance dropped. The timing of this collapse couldn't be worse for the young Australian. With only 3 races and 1 sprint remaining in the 2025 season, he has a rapidly closing window to mount a championship recovery. Every point becomes crucial when fighting for your first world title, and the psychological pressure of not understanding your own performance issues must be immense. From McLaren's perspective, this situation presents a fascinating technical challenge that goes beyond typical racing problems. The team's engineers and strategists are essentially trying to solve a puzzle where one piece doesn't fit, despite appearing identical to all the other pieces. They have 2 highly skilled drivers operating identical cars, yet achieving vastly different results. The broader implications for Formula One extend beyond this single championship battle. If teams cannot fully understand and explain performance variations between drivers using identical equipment, what does this suggest about the sport's predictability and fairness? Are there aspects of racing performance that remain beyond our current technological ability to measure and analyze? This mystery also highlights the human element that makes Formula One so captivating despite its high-tech nature. Even with all our advanced telemetry, data analysis, and engineering expertise, there remain aspects of driving performance that seem almost mystical in their elusiveness. Perhaps this is what separates truly great drivers from merely good ones, an indefinable quality that exists beyond what our instruments can measure. As we approach the final races of the 2025 season, Piastri's championship hopes hang in the balance of solving this performance puzzle. Whether McLaren's mysterious evidence can unlock the secrets of his pace deficit may determine not just this year's championship outcome, but potentially the trajectory of one of Formula One's most promising careers. The resolution of this mystery could reshape our understanding of what makes Formula One drivers successful and challenge our assumptions about the role of technology versus human intuition in motorsport's ultimate arena. Picture this: one of Formula One's most legendary team bosses, suddenly out of a job, with his former rival dropping some serious truth bombs about what went wrong. Christian Horner's dramatic exit from Red Bull has sent shockwaves through the paddock, but what McLaren's Zak Brown just revealed might be the most explosive part of this story yet. What happens when success, fame, and money change someone at the very top of motorsport? Today, we're diving deep into the bombshell accusations that could reshape how we see one of F1's most successful figures. This isn't just office drama. This is about the dark side of achieving everything you ever dreamed of in Formula One. Let me set the stage for you. Christian Horner wasn't just any team boss, he was the team boss. Under his leadership, Red Bull Racing became an absolute powerhouse, collecting 14 world championships like they were going out of style. We're talking about a man who turned an energy drink company's marketing project into the most dominant force in modern Formula One history. But here's where our story takes a dramatic turn. Just days after the British Grand Prix, Red Bull made the shocking decision to remove Horner from his position, replacing him with Laurent Mekies. Imagine building an empire only to be escorted out of your own castle. The F1 world was stunned, but the real fireworks were just beginning. Enter Zak Brown, McLaren's CEO and Horner's longtime adversary in the paddock. These two haven't just been competitors, They've been locked in verbal warfare for years, trading barbs through the media like gladiators in the arena of public opinion. But Brown's latest comments aren't just another chapter in their feud. They're a character assassination that cuts right to the core of what success can do to a person. Here's what makes this story absolutely fascinating. Brown claims he's known Horner for over 30 years, and according to him, they actually used to get along. Let that sink in for a moment. These two fierce enemies were once on friendly terms. So what changed? Brown has three specific theories, and they paint a picture of corruption that goes way beyond simple rivalry. The first accusation Brown levels is about fame, specifically the kind that comes from Netflix. Drive to Survive transformed Formula One from a niche sport into a global phenomenon, and Christian Horner became one of its biggest stars. Brown suggests that this newfound celebrity status went straight to Horner's head. Think about it, suddenly millions of people who never watched a single race knew Horner's name, his face, his story. The man who was once just a team boss became a household name, and according to Brown, that transformation wasn't pretty. But fame is just the beginning. Brown's second accusation focuses on the intoxicating effects of unprecedented success. Red Bull didn't just win under Horner, they dominated. They redefined what it meant to be successful in Formula One. When you're winning championship after championship, when every strategy call seems to work perfectly, when your team is literally rewriting the record books, that kind of power can be overwhelming. Brown suggests that Horner began to believe his own hype, that the success made him feel untouchable. The third and perhaps most damning accusation involves money. Formula One team principals earn enormous salaries, but when you're winning at the level Red Bull was, the financial rewards become astronomical. Bonuses, endorsements, speaking fees, the money starts flowing in from every direction. Brown implies that these massive financial gains corrupted Horner's character, turning him from someone who played fair into someone who would do anything to protect his golden goose. But Brown doesn't stop at general accusations. He gets specific, and this is where things get really interesting. He describes Horner as the type of competitor who would squeeze you completely off the track, while characterizing himself as someone who leaves space, someone who still believes in fair play. It's a perfect metaphor for how their relationship deteriorated over the years. The most explosive example Brown provides involves what he calls the tire water saga from the previous season. According to Brown, Horner started spreading rumors that McLaren was injecting water into their tires for cooling and performance benefits. Now, this is serious stuff. If true, it would be a major technical violation that could result in disqualifications and penalties. But here's the kicker. The FIA, Formula One's governing body, investigated these allegations thoroughly and found absolutely no evidence of wrongdoing. Brown doesn't just dismiss this as a mistake or misunderstanding. He accuses Horner of knowingly spreading false information, suggesting that Horner never actually believed the allegations were true. Instead, Brown claims Horner was deliberately trying to disrupt McLaren's operations through what amounts to psychological warfare. This accusation reveals something much darker than simple competitive rivalry. If Brown is right, we're talking about a pattern of behavior where Horner was willing to use false allegations as weapons against his competitors. It's not just unsporting, it's potentially damaging to the integrity of the entire sport. Think about the implications here. When someone at Horner's level makes accusations against another team, it doesn't just stay in the paddock. Media outlets pick it up, fans start debating it, sponsors get nervous, and the accused team has to spend time and resources defending themselves instead of focusing on performance. If those accusations are knowingly false, it's a form of sabotage that goes far beyond anything we typically see in sports competition. Brown's characterization of Horner's evolution is particularly striking because it suggests a fundamental change in character rather than just competitive intensity. According to Brown, the Horner he knew decades ago wouldn't have engaged in this type of behavior. The implication is that success, Fame and wealth gradually corrupted someone who was once capable of fair competition. This raises uncomfortable questions about what happens to people when they achieve everything they've ever wanted. Does ultimate success inevitably lead to moral compromise? Are there personality types that simply can't handle the pressure and rewards that come with being at the absolute top of their field? Brown seems to think so, at least in Horner's case. What makes this story even more intriguing is that it's far from over. Horner isn't retiring quietly to count his money and polish his trophies. Reports suggest he's secured significant financial backing for his next venture and is actively pursuing ownership stakes in Formula One teams. The man who was supposedly corrupted by success is now positioning himself to potentially return to the sport with even more power and influence than before. Bernie Ecclestone, the former Formula One Supremo and longtime friend of Horner, has even suggested that Ferrari might be interested in bringing him aboard. Imagine that scenario: Horner taking over one of the most prestigious teams in motorsport history, potentially clashing with Brown and McLaren once again, but this time with the full weight of Ferrari's legendary status behind him. The possibility of Horner's return adds another layer of drama to this entire saga. Will he prove Brown wrong by demonstrating that he can compete fairly and honorably? Or will his next chapter in Formula One confirm Brown's accusations about what success has done to his character? There's also the question of whether Brown's accusations will influence how other teams and officials view Horner if he does return. In Formula One, reputation matters enormously. Team principals need to maintain relationships with other teams, with the FIA, with sponsors, and with the media. If Brown's characterization of Horner gains traction, it could make his path back to the sport significantly more difficult. But here's something else to consider. Brown isn't exactly a neutral observer in this situation. McLaren and Red Bull have been fierce competitors, and Brown has his own motivations for painting Horner in the worst possible light. The tire water allegations that Brown cites might have been based on genuine concerns rather than malicious intent to disrupt. Without being inside Horner's head, it's impossible to know his true motivations. What we can say is that Brown's accusations represent a fascinating case study in how success and power can potentially corrupt even the most successful people in sports. Whether or not you believe Brown's specific claims about Horner, the broader questions he raises about fame, success, and character are worth considering. The Formula One paddock has always been a place where enormous egos, massive amounts of money, and intense competition create volatile situations. But Brown's accusations suggest something beyond normal competitive tension. They describe a systematic pattern of behavior that goes against the fundamental principles of fair competition. As we watch this story unfold, we're not just witnessing a personal feud between two powerful men in motorsport. We're seeing a real-time examination of what happens when someone achieves ultimate success in their field, and whether that success inevitably leads to moral compromise. Christian Horner's next move could determine not just his own legacy, but also whether Zak Brown's explosive accusations were justified warnings or simply the bitter complaints of a defeated rival. One thing is certain: when Horner does make his return to Formula One, the entire sport will be watching to see which version of the man shows up. The fair competitor Brown claims to remember from 30 years ago, or the allegedly corrupted figure he describes today. Ferrari fans, we need to talk. Charles Leclerc just dropped a bombshell that has the entire Formula One world buzzing, and it might be the most honest thing you'll hear from a driver all season. What he said about Ferrari's 2025 campaign will shock you, but it also reveals something crucial about what's coming in 2026. Picture this: you're driving for the most iconic team in motorsport history, the team that every driver dreams of joining, and you have to stand in front of the media and admit that your performances simply aren't good enough. That's exactly what Charles Leclerc did recently, and his words cut deeper than any championship loss ever could. Here's what makes this story absolutely fascinating. Ferrari currently sits fourth in the constructors' standings with just 3 races remaining in the season. Think about that for a moment. This is Ferrari we're talking about, the team with more Formula One history than any other, and they're sitting behind Mercedes and Red Bull, watching their rivals rack up points while they struggle to find their footing. But wait, it gets worse. If neither Leclerc nor Lewis Hamilton manages to win a Grand Prix before the season ends, this will mark Ferrari's first winless season since 2021. Let that sink in. The prancing horse, the team that has defined Formula One excellence for decades, potentially going an entire season without a single victory. Now, Leclerc didn't just throw his team under the bus. What he said was measured, honest, and actually quite revealing about the internal dynamics at Ferrari. He acknowledged that when you drive for a team of Ferrari's caliber, anything less than winning simply isn't acceptable. That's the brutal reality of being a Ferrari driver. The expectations aren't just high, they're astronomical. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Despite admitting that their performances haven't been good enough, Leclerc also painted a picture of a team that's been on a journey of improvement throughout the season. He specifically mentioned how difficult it was at the beginning of the year to understand their new car and figure out which direction to take their development. This is where we need to dig deeper into what's really happening at Ferrari. The team started the season struggling with their car setup and aerodynamic package. They were lost, frankly, trying to figure out how to extract performance from a machine that seemed to have potential but wasn't delivering when it mattered most. The Monegasque driver has taken 7 podiums this season, which sounds impressive until you realize that none of them were victories. 7 times he stood on that podium. 7 times he's had to watch someone else celebrate on the top step. For a driver of his caliber, for a team like Ferrari, that's simply not enough. What makes Leclerc's comments even more significant is the context in which they were made. Ferrari Chairman John Elkann had already expressed his dissatisfaction with the team's performance this season, particularly after their scoreless showing at the Brazilian Grand Prix, while their rivals Mercedes and Red Bull were collecting significant points hauls. This isn't just about one disappointing race or even one disappointing season. This is about a team that's supposed to be competing for championships finding itself in a position where they're fighting for scraps, hopping to secure second place in the constructors' standings instead of battling for the title. Leclerc's honesty becomes even more remarkable when you consider what he said about Ferrari's competition. He acknowledged that they're up against very strong teams with their own rich histories in the sport. This isn't making excuses. This is recognizing the reality of modern Formula One, where the margins between success and failure are incredibly thin. The driver went on to explain something crucial about Ferrari's mindset. When you work for such an incredible brand, he said, you have to target winning. Not podiums, not moral victories, but actual wins. That's the standard, and anything less falls short of expectations. But here's what caught my attention most about Leclerc's comments. Despite all the criticism and disappointment, he described this as a good season when considering where they started and where they are now. That's a fascinating perspective that tells us something important about Ferrari's internal progress and their preparation for the future. The team's improvement throughout the season hasn't gone unnoticed. While they struggled early on to understand their new car and find the right development direction, they've gradually worked their way back into contention for strong finishes. They're now in a position where they're still fighting for second in the Constructors' Championship, which Leclerc identified as their current target. This brings us to the most intriguing part of Leclerc's statement, the part that should have every Ferrari fan excited about what's coming next. He specifically mentioned that for next year, they will target higher. Not just slightly higher, not just competitive, but higher than their current second-place goal. What does this mean for 2026? We're looking at a team that's been through a learning process this season, a team that's identified its weaknesses and is actively working to address them. The regulatory changes coming in 2026 represent a massive opportunity for teams to reset and challenge for supremacy. Ferrari's current situation reminds me of Mercedes during their difficult 2022 season. Sometimes teams need to go through these challenging periods to emerge stronger. The fact that Leclerc can honestly assess their shortcomings while simultaneously pointing toward future ambitions suggests a team that's learning from its mistakes rather than making excuses for them. When asked about his preference between earning a race win or finishing second in the constructors' standings, Leclerc's response was telling. He wants both, which shows the ambitious mindset that Ferrari needs to return to championship-winning form. He emphasized how important it would be to win at least once in such a tough season, but also recognized that the constructors' position matters for the team's overall success. The numbers tell their own story about Ferrari's current predicament. They sit 36 points behind Mercedes in the standings with 3 rounds remaining. They've also fallen behind Red Bull, with just 4 points separating them from the Milton Keynes-based squad. These aren't insurmountable gaps, but they represent the fine margins that separate good teams from great ones. What's particularly interesting is how Leclerc frames Ferrari's season as both disappointing and encouraging simultaneously. This isn't cognitive dissonance. It's the perspective of someone who understands that progress doesn't always show up immediately in the results column. Looking ahead to 2026, Ferrari's current struggles might actually position them well for the future. They're learning hard lessons about car development, team dynamics, and performance optimization. These lessons, painful as they are now, could prove invaluable when the new regulations arrive and everyone starts from a more level playing field. The fact that both Leclerc and Hamilton might end the season without a victory adds another layer to this story. 2 world-class drivers, both capable of winning races on any given weekend, potentially going an entire season without reaching the top step of the podium while driving for Ferrari. Charles Leclerc's admission that Ferrari's performances haven't been good enough represents more than just honest self-assessment. It's a signal that this team understands where they stand and where they need to go. The question now isn't whether Ferrari will bounce back, but how quickly they can transform their current lessons into future victories. With 2026 regulations on the horizon and a driver lineup that includes 2 proven race winners, Ferrari's current struggles might just be the foundation for their next championship campaign. Sometimes, you have to admit you're not good enough before you can become great again. Picture this. You're Max Verstappen, screaming around the Lusail circuit at over 200 miles per hour, your tires heating up to extreme temperatures, when suddenly your race engineer radios in with news that could completely change your strategy. Your tires have hit their maximum lap limit, and you need to pit immediately. Welcome to the new reality of Formula One racing in Qatar, where Pirelli has just dropped a bombshell that's reshaping how teams approach one of the most demanding races on the calendar. What we're witnessing here isn't just another minor rule adjustment. This is Pirelli essentially admitting that the Qatar Grand Prix pushes their rubber compounds beyond what they can safely handle. And when the company responsible for keeping 20 of the world's fastest drivers safe at 300 kilometers per hour says they need to implement emergency measures, you know something serious is happening. The rule is simple but revolutionary. Every single tire set that teams receive for the Qatar Grand Prix weekend can now only complete a maximum of 25 laps around the Lusail International Circuit. That's it. No exceptions, no extensions, no pushing beyond the limit like teams normally do. Once those 25 laps are up, those tires become essentially illegal to use. To put this in perspective, the Qatar Grand Prix runs for 57 laps. With this new 25-lap limit, drivers will be forced to make at least 2 pit stops during the race, fundamentally changing the strategic landscape. Teams that were planning single-stop strategies or extended stints to gain track position will need to completely rethink their approach. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about the main race on Sunday. The lap count is cumulative across the entire weekend. Every practice session, every qualifying run, the sprint race on Saturday, everything counts toward that 25-lap total. Teams will need to manage their tire allocation like never before, carefully calculating exactly how many laps they can afford to run in each session. The sprint race alone is 23 laps, meaning drivers can complete the entire sprint distance on a single set with just 2 laps to spare. This creates an incredibly tight margin for error. If a driver needs to do an extra warm-up lap or gets caught behind a slower car during the sprint, they might find themselves with insufficient tire life for the main race. Pirelli's decision comes from hard data gathered during the previous Qatar Grand Prix. Their analysis revealed that several tires, particularly the left front compound, had reached maximum wear levels by the end of the race. The combination of high-speed corners, extreme heat, and the abrasive nature of the Lusail circuit creates a perfect storm of tire degradation. The left front tire bears the brunt of punishment at Qatar. The circuit features several high-speed right-hand corners that place enormous lateral forces on the left side of the car. As drivers push through these corners lap after lap, the left front tire experiences tremendous stress, heating up to dangerous temperatures, while the rubber compound begins to break down at the molecular level. What makes this situation even more critical is the nature of modern Formula One tire management. Teams have become incredibly sophisticated at managing tire degradation, finding ways to extend stint lengths far beyond what was thought possible just a few years ago. They've developed techniques to keep tire temperatures in optimal windows, preserving performance while minimizing wear. However, this advanced tire management sometimes pushes compounds beyond their structural limits. While the surface of the tire might still appear usable, the internal construction can suffer from what engineers call structural fatigue. This invisible deterioration can lead to sudden failures, creating dangerous situations at speeds where drivers have no time to react. The Qatar circuit presents unique challenges that amplify these risks. The track surface is notoriously abrasive, acting like sandpaper on the tire compounds. Combined with ambient temperatures that can exceed 40 degrees Celsius and track temperatures reaching 60 degrees or higher, the rubber compounds face an extreme test of endurance. High lateral energy loads compound the problem. Modern Formula One cars generate incredible downforce, pressing the tires into the track surface with tremendous force. When combined with the high-speed nature of the Qatar circuit, this creates energy loads that push tire compounds to their absolute limits. Pirelli's intervention represents a significant shift in their approach to tire safety. Traditionally, the company has relied on teams to self-regulate tire usage, trusting that engineers would pit their drivers before reaching dangerous wear levels. The new mandatory limit represents an acknowledgement that some circuits require more direct intervention to ensure safety. This isn't the first time Pirelli has implemented special measures for Qatar. In 2023, they introduced an 18-lap limit, though that restriction was implemented for different reasons. That year, drivers were experiencing micro-lacerations in tire sidewalls caused by riding over aggressive curbing. Track modifications, including changes to the pyramid curbs and the addition of gravel strips, resolved those specific issues. The current 25-lap limit addresses a completely different problem. Rather than external damage from track features, this restriction targets internal structural fatigue caused by the extreme operating conditions. It represents a more fundamental limitation based on the physical properties of the tire compounds themselves. For teams, this rule change creates both challenges and opportunities. The mandatory pit stops level the playing field somewhat, preventing any single team from gaining a significant advantage through superior tire management. However, it also rewards teams with superior pit stop execution and strategic flexibility. The tire allocation for Qatar reflects the severity of the challenge. Pirelli is bringing their hardest compound selection, C1 as the hard tire, C2 as the medium, and C3 as the soft. These are the most durable compounds in their range, specifically chosen to handle the demanding conditions. Even with these hardy compounds, the 25-lap limit remains necessary. As a sprint weekend, each driver receives 12 sets of tires, 2 hard, 4 medium, and 6 soft compounds. With the cumulative lap counting system, teams must carefully allocate these sets across practice, qualifying, the sprint race, and the main Grand Prix. Strategic tire management becomes as important as raw pace. The implications extend beyond just race strategy. Car setup becomes crucial when tire degradation is artificially limited. Teams must find the perfect balance between outright performance and tire preservation, knowing they cannot rely on extended stints to gain positions. This could favor cars with superior race pace over those optimized for qualifying performance. Driver adaptation will be critical. Some drivers excel at tire management, finding ways to maintain pace while preserving rubber. Others prefer to push hard and rely on superior raw speed. The new regulations could shake up the competitive order, potentially favoring drivers who can adapt quickly to the constraints. The psychological impact on drivers shouldn't be underestimated. Knowing that tire failure could occur without warning creates additional mental pressure during an already demanding race. Drivers must trust that the 25-lap limit provides adequate safety margins while pushing their cars to the absolute limit within those constraints. Looking at the broader implications for Formula One, this rule change might represent a preview of future tire regulations. As cars become faster and circuits more demanding, artificial limits on tire usage could become more common. The sport must balance the desire for unlimited competition with the paramount importance of safety. The Qatar Grand Prix has always been one of the most physically demanding races on the calendar. Extreme heat, high speeds, and punishing track conditions test both man and machine to their limits. The new tire regulations add another layer of complexity to what was already one of the most challenging weekends in Formula One. As we approach this year's Qatar Grand Prix, the 25-lap tire limit will fundamentally reshape how teams approach the weekend. Strategy meetings will focus as much on tire allocation as on car setup. Engineers will need to develop new models for predicting optimal pit windows within the constraints of the lap limits. The fans can expect a more unpredictable race with guaranteed strategic variety. Multiple pit stops ensure that track position will change hands regularly throughout the 57-lap distance. The artificial limitation removes some strategic options while creating others, potentially leading to more exciting wheel-to-wheel racing, as drivers push harder knowing they cannot rely on tire conservation alone. This radical rule change represents Formula One's ongoing evolution, as it balances performance, safety, and entertainment value in an increasingly complex sport. What if I told you that one of Formula One's most successful team bosses might be plotting his comeback at the sport's most chaotic team? The rumors swirling around Christian Horner and Ferrari are absolutely wild, and today we're diving deep into what could be the most shocking power move in modern F1 history. Hey F1 fans, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we break down all the biggest stories from the paddock. Today's story is absolutely bonkers, and it involves one of the most controversial figures in recent F1 memory potentially taking over at the most prestigious team on the grid. Christian Horner's departure from Red Bull back in July sent shockwaves through the entire Formula One community. The man who guided Red Bull to multiple championships, who built one of the most dominant teams in the sport's history, was suddenly out of the picture. But here's where things get really interesting. Bernie Ecclestone, the former Supremo of Formula One himself, thinks Horner's next destination should be Ferrari, and his reasoning is absolutely brutal. Let me paint you the picture of what's happening at Ferrari right now, because it's honestly a complete mess. The team that once dominated F1, the team that carries the hopes and dreams of millions of Italian fans worldwide, is currently what Ecclestone describes as complete chaos. Those are strong words from someone who's seen it all in Formula One. Ferrari President John Elkann recently made some absolutely shocking statements about his own drivers. We're talking about Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, and Charles Leclerc, one of the brightest talents on the grid. Elkann basically told them to talk less and focus more on driving. Can you imagine being one of the greatest drivers in F1 history and having your boss publicly tell you to shut up? That's the level of dysfunction we're dealing with at Maranello right now. But the problems at Ferrari go way deeper than just some unfortunate comments. Fred Vasseur, the current team principal, came into the season with massive expectations. Ferrari was supposed to be a title contender this year. They were supposed to challenge Red Bull and give their fans something to cheer about. Instead, they've been inconsistent, strategically questionable, and frankly disappointing. The rumors about Vasseur's future just won't go away, no matter how many votes of confidence he gets from the Ferrari hierarchy. Now here's where Christian Horner enters the picture, and this is where things get really spicy. According to Bernie Ecclestone, Ferrari could desperately use someone with Horner's experience and tactical brilliance. Think about what Horner accomplished at Red Bull. He took a team that was relatively new to F1 and turned them into a championship-winning machine. He managed egos, he made tough decisions, and he delivered results when it mattered most. Ecclestone's comments are particularly interesting when you consider the Adrian Newey situation. Remember when Newey, the legendary aerodynamics genius, left Red Bull for Aston Martin? There were whispers that part of his decision was influenced by not wanting to work with Horner anymore. But here's the thing. Ecclestone is suggesting that Ferrari's current chaos is so bad that even someone like Horner with all his baggage would be an improvement. The timing of all this speculation couldn't be more perfect. Ferrari is struggling with internal politics, questionable strategic decisions, and a general lack of direction. Meanwhile, Horner is sitting on the sidelines, reportedly with enough funding to either launch a bid for a 12th team or purchase an existing outfit. But why start from scratch when you could potentially take over the most famous team in motorsport? What makes this rumor even more intriguing is that Ferrari apparently approached Horner before his Red Bull departure, but those talks led nowhere at the time. Now, with both parties potentially in different positions, could they be reconsidering? Ferrari needs strong leadership, and Horner needs a way back into F1. It's like a puzzle piece that might just fit perfectly. Let's talk about what Horner could bring to Ferrari. First, he's a proven winner. Under his leadership, Red Bull didn't just win races, they dominated entire seasons. He knows how to build a winning culture, how to manage pressure, and how to make the tough decisions that championship teams require. Ferrari has all the resources in the world, incredible facilities, massive budgets, passionate fans, but they've been missing that killer instinct, that ruthless efficiency that separates good teams from great ones. Second, Horner understands the politics of Formula One better than almost anyone. He's navigated through regulation changes, driver dramas, technical controversies, and media storms. Ferrari is dealing with all of these issues right now, and they need someone who can handle the pressure while keeping the team focused on performance. But here's the flip side of this story, and it's a big one. Horner's departure from Red Bull wasn't exactly smooth sailing. There were controversies, there were internal conflicts, and there are questions about whether he's really the right person to lead a team forward. Some people in the paddock think his management style is too confrontational, too divisive. Would that approach work at Ferrari, a team with its own unique culture and traditions? The other major factor to consider is whether Ferrari would actually want to make such a dramatic change. Vasseur did receive that vote of confidence from Elkann, and team principals don't get replaced mid-season very often. But in Formula One, things can change incredibly quickly. One bad race weekend, one strategic blunder, one more public relations disaster, and suddenly everything is back on the table. What's really fascinating about this whole situation is how it reflects the current state of Formula One. The sport is more competitive than ever, the stakes are higher than ever, and teams are constantly looking for any advantage they can get. If Ferrari really believes that Horner could be the missing piece of their championship puzzle, they'd be crazy not to at least explore the possibility. The reaction from the F1 community to these rumors has been absolutely electric. Some people think Horner at Ferrari would be a match made in heaven, a proven winner joining forces with the sport's most iconic team. Others think it would be a disaster waiting to happen, that Horner's confrontational style would clash with Ferrari's traditional approach. But maybe that's exactly what Ferrari needs right now. Maybe they need someone who's willing to ruffle feathers, to shake things up, to demand excellence at every level. Their current approach clearly isn't working, so perhaps it's time for something completely different. The financial aspect of this potential move is also worth considering. Horner reportedly has the backing to start his own team, which means he's not desperate for any job that comes along. If Ferrari wants him, they'd have to make it worth his while, both financially and in terms of the authority he'd have within the organization. Looking at the broader implications, a Horner move to Ferrari could completely reshape the competitive landscape of Formula One. Imagine if he could bring that Red Bull winning mentality to a team with Ferrari's resources and history. It could create a super team that would dominate for years to come. Or it could be a complete disaster that sets Ferrari back even further. The mystery New York trip that Horner made recently has only added fuel to these speculation fires. What was he doing there? Who was he meeting with? Could it have been Ferrari representatives? The secrecy around the trip has everyone in the paddock talking and theorizing about what might be happening behind the scenes. As we look ahead to the future of Formula One, this potential Horner-Ferrari partnership represents one of the most intriguing possibilities on the horizon. It would be a gamble for both parties, but in a sport where marginal gains can mean the difference between winning and losing, sometimes you have to take big risks to achieve big rewards. So what do you think? Would Christian Horner be the perfect fix for Ferrari's problems, or would it be a recipe for even more chaos? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more F1 content. The silly season never really ends in Formula One, and this story is just getting started. Formula One is on the brink of a massive shakeup that could completely transform how races are won and lost. But some of the sport's biggest names are hitting the brakes on this controversial proposal. What if I told you that the very essence of strategic warfare that makes F1 so captivating might be about to disappear forever? The motorsport world is buzzing with heated debates over a potential rule change that could force every single driver to make 2 mandatory pit stops during each race. This isn't just another minor tweak to the regulations. We're talking about fundamentally altering the DNA of Formula One strategy. And the reaction from team principals. Let's just say they're not exactly rolling out the red carpet for this idea. Right now, drivers only need to use 2 different tire compounds during a race, which typically means just 1 pit stop. But imagine if suddenly every driver had to stop twice, no exceptions. Sounds exciting on paper, right? More pit stops, more action, more opportunities for dramatic position changes. But here's where things get really interesting. The people who actually run these teams are warning that this could backfire spectacularly. The proposal emerged from recent discussions within the F1 Commission, the sport's governing body that decides these crucial rule changes. Initially, they wanted to implement this for the upcoming season, but thankfully, no agreement was reached. Instead, they've pushed the decision back to 2026, giving everyone more time to think this through. And boy, do they need that time. Let me paint you a picture of what's really at stake here. Currently, some of the most thrilling moments in Formula One come from strategic diversity. You might have one driver stretching their tires to the absolute limit on a one-stop strategy, while another driver charges through the field on fresh rubber after multiple stops. It's this chess match between different approaches that creates those heart-stopping final laps where anything can happen. Alan Perman, the boss of Racing Bulls, dropped some serious wisdom on this topic. He pointed out something that might not be immediately obvious to casual fans. If you force everyone to make 2 stops, you could end up with every single driver following nearly identical strategies. Think about it. If everyone has to stop twice, the optimal windows for those stops become pretty clear, and suddenly you've got 20 cars all doing exactly the same thing at exactly the same times. The Racing Bulls chief explained that his strategy and tire experts are diving deep into the numbers, analyzing every possible scenario. What they're finding is fascinating and concerning. For a 2-stop race to work naturally, you need tires that actually demand 2 stops through degradation and performance differences. If you artificially force 2 stops when the tires don't naturally require it, you create an artificial situation that could actually make races more predictable, not less. Here's where it gets even more intriguing. Perman highlighted one of the most exciting elements of current F1 racing, those nail-biting scenarios where a driver on a one-stop strategy is being hunted down by someone on a 2-stop strategy. It's like watching a thriller movie where you're not sure if the hero will escape or be caught. Force everyone into the same strategy, and you lose those incredible David versus Goliath moments entirely. McLaren's team principal Andrea Stella brought up another crucial point that shows just how complex this decision really is. The 2026 season isn't just about potentially changing pit stop rules. It's already going to be a massive upheaval with entirely new technical regulations. The cars will be different, the engines will be different, and teams are already preparing for what amounts to a complete reset of the sport. Stella's suggestion: let's pump the brakes and see what happens first. Why pile another major change on top of what's already going to be the biggest regulatory shift in years? It's like trying to renovate your kitchen, bathroom, and roof all at the same time. You might end up with a disaster instead of improvement. The McLaren boss emphasized that tire degradation remains the fundamental factor that creates strategic variety and exciting racing. When tires wear out at different rates or perform differently over stint lengths, that's when you get natural pit stop windows, strategic gambles, and those amazing moments where a driver's tire strategy either pays off brilliantly or fails spectacularly. But here's something that might surprise you. Williams team principal James Vowles isn't completely opposed to mandatory 2 stops in theory. However, he's raising a red flag about timing and implementation. His biggest fear mirrors what others are saying, that forcing 2 stops right now could lead to every team doing essentially the same thing, potentially making races less exciting rather than more thrilling. Vowles emphasized getting the fundamentals right first. Before you start mandating pit stops, you need to ensure that tire degradation and performance gaps between different compounds create natural strategic opportunities. It's like building a house. You need a solid foundation before you start adding decorative elements. The Williams chief is particularly worried about what he calls reduced variability. Instead of having multiple strategic paths that teams can choose from, you might end up with everyone stopping within a lap or 2 of each other, turning what should be a strategic battleground into a follow-the-leader parade. What makes this debate even more fascinating is the broader context of what Formula One is trying to achieve. The sport has spent years working to improve overtaking opportunities, reduce the impact of dirty air, and create more competitive racing. The fear is that mandatory 2 stops could undo some of that progress by removing strategic diversity. Think about some of the most memorable races in recent years. Often, they've featured dramatic strategic splits where different approaches created multiple storylines within a single race. You might have early stoppers trying to undercut, late stoppers hopping for a safety car, and some drivers attempting to make their tires last longer than anyone thought possible. The current system already encourages pit stops through the requirement to use two different tire compounds, but it leaves room for creativity and risk-taking. Some drivers might try to make an aggressive one-stop work, while others might go for multiple stops if track conditions or race circumstances favor that approach. What's particularly interesting is how this proposal reflects the ongoing tension between artificial entertainment and natural competition. Formula One has experimented with various ideas over the years to spice up the show: DRS zones, different point systems, sprint races. Some have worked better than others, but the most successful elements have been those that enhance natural racing rather than forcing artificial situations. The team principal's cautious response suggests they understand something crucial: that the best racing comes from genuine strategic dilemmas and competitive pressure, not from rules that force everyone into the same box. When strategy is dictated by regulations rather than emerging from competitive dynamics, you lose the human element that makes racing compelling. As we look toward 2026, it's clear that Formula One faces a delicate balancing act. The sport wants to maintain its position as the pinnacle of motorsport, while also ensuring that races remain entertaining for fans. The mandatory two-stop proposal represents one possible path, but the wisdom from team principals suggests that patience and careful consideration might be more valuable than hasty changes. The debate continues, and ultimately, the decision will shape the future of Formula One racing for years to come. What if I told you that the greatest advantage in Formula One isn't car speed, tire strategy, or even race craft? What if the single most powerful weapon a driver can possess is something you can't see on the telemetry data or measure in lap times? Today, we're diving deep into the psychological battleground of Formula One, where former world champion Damon Hill has identified a crucial advantage that could completely flip the 2025 championship fight on its head. The 2025 Formula One season is reaching its climactic finale, and the championship battle has taken more twists than a Monaco hairpin. With just 3 races remaining, Lando Norris sits at the top of the standings, but lurking in the shadows is a 4-time world champion who many have written off too early. Max Verstappen trails by a significant margin, yet Damon Hill believes the Red Bull driver possesses something that money can't buy and practice can't teach. Let me paint you a picture of where we stand right now. Earlier this season, Oscar Piastri was leading the championship by 34 points, looking like he might become the youngest champion in Formula One history. The McLaren rookie was driving with the confidence of a seasoned veteran, taking victories and consistently finishing on the podium. But as we've learned time and again in this sport, momentum can shift faster than you can say pit stop. The tide turned, and suddenly it was Lando Norris who found himself in the driver's seat. His teammate Piastri began making costly mistakes, and the point swing was dramatic. From leading by 34 points, Piastri now trails Norris by 24 points. That's a 58-point swing that perfectly illustrates just how brutal Formula One can be on a driver's psyche. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen has been quietly building momentum like a gathering storm. Since the summer break, he's made the podium at every single race. That's not just consistency, that's championship-winning form. He's claimed victories at some of the most challenging circuits on the calendar, including Monza, Baku, and the Circuit of the Americas. Each victory was a statement, each podium a reminder that writing off a 4-time world champion is a dangerous game. The Brazilian Grand Prix weekend perfectly encapsulated the mental warfare that defines championship battles. Verstappen faced what should have been a disastrous weekend. A shock elimination in the first qualifying session meant starting from the pit lane after his team made setup changes and fitted a new Honda power unit. Most drivers would have written off the weekend, accepted the damage limitation, and looked ahead to the next race. But here's where championship experience reveals itself. While others might have crumbled under the pressure, Verstappen delivered a masterclass in damage control and aggressive driving. His recovery from dead last to third place wasn't just impressive racing, it was a psychological statement to his rivals. Even on his worst day, even starting from the back of the grid, he could still extract points and remain a threat. However, that same weekend saw Lando Norris demonstrate his own championship credentials by claiming both the sprint race victory and the Grand Prix win. The double victory was exactly what a championship contender needed to do, maximizing points when the opportunity presented itself. But here's where Damon Hill's insight becomes crucial. Hill, who knows exactly what it feels like to fight for a world championship, having won the title in 1996, offers a perspective that cuts straight to the heart of what separates champions from nearly champions. According to Hill, there's absolutely nothing that can prepare you for genuinely being in championship contention. The pressure, the expectation, the weight of possibility, it all becomes very real very quickly. Think about it from Norris and Piastri's perspective. For most of their careers, winning a world championship was a distant dream, something to aspire to but not necessarily expect. Then suddenly, they find themselves with genuine chances to achieve the ultimate prize in motorsport. That transition from dreamer to contender creates a psychological shift that can be overwhelming. Hill explains that when championship success transforms from a long-shot possibility into something that seems almost guaranteed, it begins to play with your mind. The reality of potentially winning your first world championship hits like a freight train. Every decision becomes magnified, every mistake feels catastrophic, and every race weekend carries the weight of a lifetime's ambition. This is where Verstappen's experience becomes his secret weapon. He's already conquered that psychological mountain. He's felt the pressure of fighting for his first title and emerged victorious. More importantly, he's done it 4 consecutive times, each championship teaching him something new about managing pressure, expectation, and the mental game that defines title fights. The first championship is always the hardest because it's uncharted territory. You don't know how your body will react to the pressure, how your mind will handle the stress, or whether you'll be able to perform when everything is on the line. Hill describes it perfectly when he talks about how that first title can become tantalizing and potentially distracting. Verstappen cleared that hurdle back in 2021 in one of the most intense championship battles Formula One has ever seen. His victory over Lewis Hamilton that season wasn't just about speed or strategy. It was about mental fortitude under unprecedented pressure. Every subsequent championship has reinforced those mental muscles, making him more dangerous, not less, when the stakes are highest. Let's examine how this psychological advantage manifests in practical terms. When Verstappen faced that pit lane start in Brazil, his reaction wasn't panic or frustration. It was cold calculation. He'd been in high-pressure situations before and knew that championships aren't won or lost in single weekends. His ability to minimize damage while positioning himself for future opportunities demonstrated championship-level thinking. Compare this to how pressure has affected other drivers throughout the season. We've seen moments where the magnitude of the championship fight has seemed to overwhelm even the most talented competitors. Mistakes that wouldn't normally happen suddenly appear. Conservative decision-making replaces aggressive racing, and the natural instincts that make these drivers exceptional become clouded by overthinking. The championship mathematics tell us that Verstappen faces the biggest challenge. He needs to make up significant ground in the remaining 3 races. Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi represent his final opportunities to claim that historic 5th consecutive title. The numbers suggest he must be within 57 points of the leader after Las Vegas to maintain realistic championship hopes. But here's what the numbers don't show. The pressure is actually on his competitors, not on him. Verstappen has nothing to lose at this point. He can drive with the freedom that comes from being the hunter rather than the hunted. Meanwhile, Norris and Piastri must manage the weight of expectation, the fear of throwing away a golden opportunity, and the pressure of delivering their first world championship. Hill's insight reveals why experience matters so much in these crucial moments. It's not just about knowing how to set up a car or execute race strategy. It's about understanding your own psychological response to pressure, knowing how to compartmentalize stress, and maintaining focus when the entire world is watching. The mental game becomes even more critical when you consider the unpredictable nature of Formula One. Weather conditions, mechanical failures, strategic miscalculations, or simple racing incidents can dramatically alter championship standings in a single afternoon. The ability to stay calm, adapt quickly, and maintain championship-level thinking under these circumstances often separates winners from the nearly successful. Verstappen's honest assessment of his championship chances reveals another aspect of his psychological advantage. When asked about his competitiveness at the remaining circuits, his response was refreshingly straightforward. He simply doesn't know. This isn't defeatism, it's realism combined with focus on what he can control. Rather than getting caught up in predictions or building false confidence, Verstappen is channeling his energy into maximizing performance at each remaining opportunity. This present moment focus is exactly what championship experience teaches you. Past results don't guarantee future success, and overconfidence can be just as dangerous as doubt. The psychological warfare extends beyond individual drivers to entire teams. McLaren must now manage two drivers who both have championship aspirations, while trying to maximize their chances of securing both the drivers' and constructors' championships. That internal dynamic adds another layer of complexity that Red Bull doesn't have to navigate. As we head into the final three races, Hill's analysis suggests we shouldn't count out the four-time world champion just yet. While the mathematics favor his competitors, the psychology might actually favor Verstappen. His experience of sealing championship deals under pressure, combined with his current position as the hunter rather than the hunted, creates a dangerous combination. The 2025 championship fight is far from over, and the mental game might prove to be the deciding factor in who ultimately claims the crown.